Hey guys, Fun Bun here. It's time for Gatsby Chapter 4. Gatsby Chapter 4. That's what we're doing today. Here's my little Fun Bun summary. Here's what's going to happen in Gatsby Chapter 4. Alright, you ready? You're not ready. Ready now? Okay, now you're ready. Okay, here we go. So, Gatsby Chapter 4. Nick is just sitting around one day. He's got nothing in his to-do list except that later in the day, he's going to go see Jordan. They're going to meet for like tea in the afternoon, then maybe get some dinner or something. Well, he's sitting in his house. He hears a car. He looks out the window, and he sees that Gatsby just pulled into his driveway. Gatsby drives a big yellow car. It's big, it's flashy, it's new, it's fancy. It's his car. It's a yellow car. So he's like, hey, old sport, because that's what he says all the time, old sport. Hey, old sport, let's go to lunch. And Nick's like, okay. So he goes off. They've already hung out a few times. Nick's been to a couple of his parties at this point. And also they went out on the boat that one time. But Nick's like, I still don't really know much about this guy Gatsby, even though we've hung out a few times, because he doesn't really talk about himself. So they're on their way to lunch, and all of a sudden, there's this big info dump. Like, Gatsby's like, hey, here's me. Here's about me. I want you to know some stuff, because I'm going to ask you for a favor, okay? So here's some stuff about me. And he tells Nick all this stuff. He says that he's from old money. He says his parents were super wealthy, but that all of his family died when he was young. It was super tragic, and it was sad, and he was super sad about it for a long time. But they were super wealthy, and then they gave him all his money because he was the only one left. And then now he's got all this money. And afterwards, he says he went from like country to country, and he was hanging out in Europe and Paris and all the different capitals where there's fancy stuff going on. He was going to try it out, and he was like collecting rubies and hunting big game and doing all this stuff and just being rich and, famous and awesome and whatever else. And he did all those things because he was trying to, fill the great big hole in his heart, basically. He tells Nick he's from the Midwest. Now, Nick is from the Midwest, too, so he asks Gatsby, where in the Midwest? What part of the Midwest you from? Gatsby's like, San Francisco, which isn't really the Midwest at all. It's on the West Coast. So that seems a little sketchy, not gonna lie. But then he tells Nick that he grew up in the United States, and he was then educated at Oxford. Oxford is a very prestigious school in England. Being an Oxford man gives a person some credibility and status. You must be, super wealthy and have culture and be old money if you're an Oxford man. Well, he tells Nick that, and Nick heard that from Jordan Baker already. And Jordan told him, he said, he claims to be an Oxford man, but I don't believe it. Well, Jordan didn't believe it. Now, Nick is hearing it from Gatsby, and he's like, I'm not sure I believe that either. Gatsby also says he did these heroic things during the war, like he took his machine gun crew and they went so far advanced in the front lines and they held back the Germans all by themselves, and they found like 6, division insignias from the German soldiers because they had so many people that they stopped from raiding the front lines, and they stopped all these Germans and all this stuff, and he's a great war hero and he got all these medals and everything else, and Nick's, at this point, a little unsure if he believes any of it. He hears from Gatsby, but it just doesn't all quite add up. Well, he also then sees, that Gatsby's a little prepared for his speculation, because Gatsby pulls out a picture from his Oxford days. And he's like, hey, here's me at Oxford. And these are some of my friends, and that guy is now a famous this, and this guy is now a famous that. And so Nick's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that is true. And then he pulls out a war medal. Gatsby's like, this is the medal I got for extraordinary valor from the little country of Montenegro during the war. Everybody else gave me a medal too, but this one's the one I like the best. Here's the one from Montenegro. And Nick's like, oh, wow, that looks real. Maybe he's telling the truth. Well, he's really not sure why Gatsby wants him to know all these things. Why is Gatsby setting himself up as a war hero? Why is he setting himself up as, this person who is super cultured and old money when he's not entirely sure that that's true? Well, Nick's going to find that out too. See, Gatsby is mysterious to a fault. So why all of a sudden does he start telling Nick his life story? He does it right then, very deliberately. He's deliberate, but he's really awkward about it. He wants Nick to think he's a good guy. He shows Nick the picture at Oxford. He shows him the medal so that he'll think that all these things actually happened. He wants to impress Nick, and he wants Nick to believe that he's a great guy because he wants this favor from Nick. And then, just to add to his point, he takes Nick to lunch, and they meet a man named Meyer Wolfsheim. Wolfsheim was a criminal, I guess at least a little bit, because Gatsby says that he fixed the 1919 World Series. So, like, he made it so a certain team won so that he could bet on it. And, so when they meet this guy, there seems to be a weird agenda going on because Wolfsheim, like, awkwardly tells Nick how great Gatsby is and how you can trust him with the ladies. Like, he'd never do anything inappropriate with another man's wife. You can trust Gatsby to hang out with your girl because he wouldn't dare betray your trust, all that kind of stuff. And it comes across like he's almost reading a script. Like, it's really kind of awkward. The guy's like, hey, Nick, it's nice to meet you. This guy Gatsby is a cool cat. Yep, now I have told you what I am supposed to tell you. I am leaving. Thank you for lunch. Bye-bye. Like, I don't know. It just comes across as very put on. Like, Gatsby told this guy, hey, you need to tell my friend that I'm okay to be around the ladies. I don't know. It seems weird, right? Well, it only seems weird because we don't know the rest of the story yet. See, afterwards, Nick goes on his date with Jordan, and Gatsby has asked Jordan to ask Nick to do Gatsby a favor. It's like we've gone back to middle school or something, right? Hey, you go tell so-and-so that so-and-so said that so-and-so once said, like, okay, why couldn't Gatsby just ask him? Well, he thinks his chances would be better if Jordan, who's kind of Nick's girlfriend, would ask Nick to do this thing. And also, Jordan's got a little bit of the story herself, so she's got some background to tell. So later that night, for dinner, Jordan and Nick get together, and they're hanging out, and they have their little tea, and then they're going to hang out for a while, drive around town, and then they're going to go to dinner, and it's going to be great. And along the way, she says, oh, you remember that thing from the last chapter? I mean, she didn't say it that way, but that's what she's talking about. Remember how Gatsby said, I want to have a conversation with you, and also, you're the only one, and don't tell anybody. And she was like, oh, Nick, I heard the greatest thing, and it makes everything make sense. So sorry, and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the thing. Daisy and Jordan grew up together in the same town in Louisville. Daisy is a couple years older than Jordan, so Jordan looked up to her, and Daisy started hanging out with the boy folks before Jordan really had any boyfriends. And one day, Jordan says that she saw Daisy and a officer from the local army camp chatting in her car, in Daisy's car. And they were looking at each other with the fluttery eyelashes. They were like, oh, we're so in love. And I think it said something like, the officer looked at Daisy the way that all women want to be looked at least once in their life. Something romantic and squishy sounding like that. I don't know. But that's what she said. So then he's like, oh, well, we got to have this conversation, and he got to go off to war, and Daisy's pretty broken up about it, and apparently so is Gatsby. But Gatsby had to go away, and it wasn't long before Daisy found another boyfriend who was like, hey, we should get married. But then she got a letter from Gatsby, and she almost called off the wedding because she really kind of loved Gatsby. But then Tom was like, hey, I'm old money, and here we go. And it was this whole rough time for Daisy. So it turns out that Gatsby and Daisy knew each other once upon a time. They were kind of boyfriend and girlfriend when they were younger. And then they lost track of each other because he went to war and she got married, and now he wants to be reintroduced to Daisy. He's like, yo, Nick, your cousin, I think she's hot, just like you do, apparently. It's still weird. Gotta say, it's still weird. So he's like, hey, I want you to invite Daisy over to your house, and then I'm going to pop in. But don't tell Daisy that I'm coming. It wants to be a surprise. That's what's going to happen. So you invite her to your house, and I'm going to pop in, and we'll go from there. I don't know. Think that's a good idea? Do you think maybe there's some shenaniganery coming on here? I don't know. Kind of makes the whole meeting with Wolfsheim be like, hey, cuz, I really got the hots for your cuz. Can I, want to help me out? I want to say hi to her, but that's the thing. Anyway, we'll see what happens in chapter 5. Is Nick going to do it? Is he not? What does Gatsby do? What do they say? Do they like each other? Do they hate each other? What does Tom have to say about all this? We'll see. Okay? That's where we're at. All right. We'll pick it up tomorrow. As always, Fun Bun, over and out.